I was halfway through reviewing my slides when my phone buzzed on the marble kitchen counter. The glossy screen lit up beneath the warm glow of the pendant lights, and for a moment, I didn't think much of it. Probably another email, another request, another client wanting something urgent. But when I wiped my thumb across the notification, the words hit me harder than I expected. Ava, the Lakeside High 15-year reunion is this Saturday. Hope to see you there. My breath stalled, just a little. Lakeside High. A place that lived inside me like a bruise, not fresh enough to hurt daily, but deep enough to throb when pressed. I smoothed the silk sleeve of my ivory blouse, grounding myself with a soft, familiar texture. It was strange how success could wrap itself around you like armor, yet the past could still slip a knife through a seam. I looked around my apartment. The floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Seattle skyline, the quiet hum of the espresso machine finishing its cycle, the neat stack of printed notes for the conference, where I'd be the keynote speaker next week. If only they could see me now. The same people who once snickered when I raised my hand in class. The same ones who whispered that I was too much, too emotional, too embarrassing. I exhaled slowly. Fine. Maybe it was time. Not for revenge. Not for validation. Just closure. My phone buzzed again. This time, with a message from a name I hadn't seen in years. Are you actually coming? Don't make it weird, Ava. A humorless smile tugged at my lips. Oh, they had no idea. I was 17 the first time someone called me embarrassing. Funny how a single word can stitch itself into your memory, tighter than any praise ever could. It was senior year, the last Friday before winter break. The hallways smelled like peppermint gum and cheap cologne, and I remember clutching a stack of volunteer sign-up sheets to my chest, sheets I had spent the entire week organizing for the community project I had suggested. I was proud of it. Nervous, but proud. That's when Madison Blake, queen of the effortlessly perfect, turned around in front of the whole hallway and said, loud enough for laughter to echo, Ava, nobody cares about your little projects. God, you're so embarrassing. Her friends laughed. Someone snorted. Someone whispered, here she goes again. My throat tightened so hard it felt like swallowing glass. My hands shook, and the paper slipped from my fingers, fluttering to the floor like defeated white flags. I kept telling myself not to cry. Not here. Not in front of them. But shame has a way of burning right beneath the skin, hot and impossible to hide. After school, I walked straight to the one safe place I had left, my grandmother's porch. The cedar wood creaked under my steps as I climbed up, wiping my eyes with my sleeve. She was already waiting, as if she knew. Grandma Ruth didn't ask what happened. She just handed me a mug of hot chocolate, let me sit beside her, and listen to the quiet. After a few minutes, she reached into the pocket of her cardigan and placed a small silver compass in my palm. You don't need anyone else to point you in the right direction, she said softly. Just promise me you won't let people who feel small convince you that you are. I traced the edge of the compass. It wasn't fancy, a little scratched, a little worn, but in that moment it felt like the only thing that could hold me together. That night, I made a decision that changed everything. I applied to a program in Seattle, one no one thought I'd get into. I packed slowly, quietly, without announcing anything on social media. No dramatics, no speeches, no begging to be understood. Just leaving. Leaving the whispers. Leaving the humiliation. Leaving the version of me they thought I would always be. I didn't know it then, but stepping onto that bus was the first time I chose myself over their expectations. And it was the last day anyone's opinion of me mattered more than my own. Seattle didn't welcome me with open arms. It greeted me with gray skies, rain-slicked sidewalks, and a loneliness so sharp it felt like weather too. But loneliness can be a teacher. And I listened. My first apartment was a studio the size of a storage unit, a single window, a mattress on the floor, and a thrifted desk that wobbled any time I breathed near it. But it was mine. Every chipped tile and creaky floorboard whispered, you started over. You chose this. The program I got into, the Cascadia Innovation Fellowship, sounded fancier than it looked. It was mostly long nights, group projects, and professors who pushed us past every comfort zone we thought we had. That's where I met Dr. Evelyn Hart, the woman who became the mentor I didn't know I desperately needed. Evelyn wasn't warm in the grandmotherly way. She was warm in the way fire is. She lit something in you whether you wanted it or not. The first time she saw one of my proposals, a community-based digital learning platform, she didn't pat me on the back. She didn't soften her voice. She simply said, "Ava, this isn't just good. This is what people build companies around." I think I stared at her for a full 10 seconds. Because no one had ever spoken to me like that before, like I was capable of something big. So I worked harder than I ever had. Long nights blurred into early mornings. I survived on $2 coffee and playlists that promised focus energy. I learned coding from free online courses, business strategy from library books, and resilience from the quiet part of my heart that refused to quit. There were days I questioned everything, days my eyes burned from lack of sleep, days I thought maybe Madison and everyone else had been right. That maybe I was too emotional, too intense, too much. But then I'd pull out the small silver compass from my backpack, run my thumb along its edges, feel it steady me, and I'd keep going. The first big break came unexpectedly. Evelyn submitted my platform proposal to a state innovation grant without telling me. When I got the acceptance email, I reread it 12 times just to be sure it wasn't a mistake. It wasn't. I built my beta version in that tiny studio apartment, sitting cross-legged on the floor with my laptop propped on a stack of textbooks. When the platform launched 2 months later, I expected maybe a handful of signups. Instead, schools began contacting me. Educators wanted to collaborate. A nonprofit reached out about partnership. It felt unreal. But I didn't post any of it online. Not the grant. Not the launch. Not the growing traction. Every time someone from my hometown asked how I was doing, I kept my answer simple. Just working. Nothing special. And maybe it was petty, or maybe it was self-protection. Either way, I wasn't ready yet to let the people who once belittled me see the version of me I was finally becoming. Some things deserve to grow in the dark before anyone else gets to witness the bloom. The night of the reunion felt unreal, like stepping into a place that existed in memory, but not in the present. I pulled into the Lakeside Community Center parking lot just as the sun was dipping behind the trees, staining the sky with muted oranges and pinks. My rental car hummed softly as I turned it off. I could have come in my Tesla, but I didn't want the night to start with a statement. I wanted the truth to speak for itself. I checked my reflection in the visor mirror. A soft taupe dress, simple gold earrings, and a touch of gloss. Confident, but not loud. Elegant, but not flashy. Still undeniably me. My fingers lingered on the small silver compass tucked into my clutch. "Let's do this," I whispered. Inside, the reunion buzzed with loud laughter, punch bowls, a photo booth, and the same old acoustic band trying their best. Name tags with neon markers. Faces I hadn't seen in years. Some older, some softer, some exactly the same. And then I heard it. The one voice I knew I'd hear eventually.
Oh, my God.
Ava Monroe. Madison Blake. Still perfect, still polished, still carrying herself like the world was her reflection. She gave me a slow once-over. Not subtle, not kind. "You actually came," she said, a tight smile on her lips. "I told everyone you probably wouldn't show. I mean, considering." "Considering what?" I asked lightly. Her smile widened. "You know, how awkward you used to be. We didn't want you feeling out of place again." I let her words sit in the air. In the past, they would have cut deep. Tonight, they felt weightless. I simply smiled. "Well, thanks for the concern." Her smirk flickered, just a little, as if she wasn't expecting calm. We were interrupted by Mr. Langford, our old principal, tapping the mic at the front of the room. "All right, everyone, please take your seats. Tonight, we're honored to welcome a very special guest, our keynote speaker." Chairs shuffled. People whispered. My heart beat steady, not nervous, just ready. Mr. Langford continued, This year's speaker is a former Lakeside student who's made extraordinary contributions in education technology, community innovation, and digital equity. The recipient of the Cascadia Impact Award, founder and CEO of North Star Learning Systems. I watched as heads began turning. Eyes widened. Whispers surged. Madison squinted toward the stage. Wait, who? Mr. Langford smiled proudly. Please welcome Ava Monroe. The room froze. A beat of utter silence. Then 50 faces snapped toward me at once. Madison's jaw parted just slightly, enough to reveal the disbelief, the sudden flush of confusion, the realization that she had miscalculated. Someone whispered, "That's her?" Another, "Ava? Like our Ava?" I walked toward the stage, heels clicking softly against the polished floor. Every step felt like reclaiming a piece of myself I didn't even know I'd left behind. When I reached the podium, I set my compass beside the microphone. It gleamed under the overhead lights like a tiny, stubborn star. "Hi, everyone," I said, letting my voice carry gently across the room. "It's been a long time." People leaned in. Eyes softened. Some looked stunned, some embarrassed, some genuinely curious. I know many of us didn't talk much in high school. Some of us didn't get along. Some of us were still figuring out who we were. My gaze landed on Madison for only a second, long enough for her to shift uncomfortably in her seat. But life has a funny way of showing you that the parts of yourself others mocked are often the parts that make you shine. A delicate hush fell across the room. I took a breath, steady and grounded. And tonight, I'm honored to share with you the journey that started right here, with a girl who was once called embarrassing and who turned that into her greatest strength. The applause rose slowly, then all at once, loud, genuine, overwhelming. For the first time, I didn't shrink. I let myself be seen. The applause faded into a warm hum, the kind that settles into your bones. When I stepped down from the stage, people approached me with handshakes, hugs, questions, wide eyes full of something I hadn't seen before: respect. But the reunion had one conversation waiting like a storm cloud. Madison. She stood stiffly near the refreshments table, clutching her cup so tightly her knuckles paled. When I walked toward her, her posture changed, shoulders pulling back, chin lifting as if preparing for impact. "Ava," she said, voice controlled. "That was impressive." "Thank you," I replied softly. She swallowed hard. Her confidence wavered. Her eyes flicked away before returning to mine. Looked about high school. "I know I wasn't exactly nice, but we were kids, you know? And I never thought you'd," her voice trailed off, searching for a word, "become all this." There it was, the apology wrapped in disbelief. I felt the compass in my clutch, its weight grounding me. We were kids, I agreed. But the things we say at that age can shape people more than we realize. She nodded stiffly. "Is there any chance we could start fresh?" I held her gaze. Not cruelly, just clearly. "Yes," I said. "But only if we're starting with honesty." Madison blinked. "Honesty?" I stepped a little closer, enough that she couldn't dodge the truth. "You weren't cruel to me because I was embarrassing, Madison. You were cruel because you needed someone to belittle to feel secure. That's not a high school problem. That's a you problem." She froze. "And if we start fresh," I continued, "it has to be with you doing the work. Therapy. Accountability. Real growth. Not just sorry, because I'm impressed now." Her eyes welled, not dramatically, but with a small human crack she tried to hide. "That's fair," she whispered. I nodded. "Then yes, we can try again." She exhaled shakily. "Thank you." She stepped aside, and another familiar face approached. Jake Holloway, the boy who used to tease me for raising my hand too much. Now a father of two and a small-town contractor. "Ava, hey." He rubbed the back of his neck. I wasn't the kindest either.
"I'm sorry."
Truly. I gave him a gentle smile. "I appreciate that. And I'll accept your apology with one condition." He raised his brows. "Name it. You have 2 daughters, right?" He nodded. Then teach them never to shrink themselves to make others comfortable. And teach them to stand up for girls who get mocked for caring too much. He let out a breath that trembled. I can do that.
Good, I said.
Throughout the night, more people approached, some remorseful, some seeking advice, some simply wanting to reconnect. My conditions were always simple.
Grow.
Heal. Break the cycle. Compassion with limits. Forgiveness with boundaries. Not a single part of me wanted revenge. What I wanted, what I finally had, was power without pettiness. The kind of power that comes from knowing exactly who you are. The kind I fought for. The kind no one could give or take away. The reunion wound down slowly, like a song easing into its final notes. People drifted out in pairs or small groups, waving, smiling, promising to keep in touch this time. The room felt softer than it ever had in my memories, not because it had changed, but because I had. I stepped outside into the cool night air, the soft rustle of leaves brushing against the streetlights. The sky was clear now, stars scattered across it like small promises. I inhaled deeply, letting the crisp air fill my lungs, grounding me after the emotional weight of the evening. My phone buzzed. A text from my grandmother's old number. Of course it wasn't her. She had been gone for years. My aunt kept the number. She had sent a simple message. She'd be proud of you tonight. My throat tightened. The compass in my clutch suddenly felt heavier. I walked toward my rental car but paused before getting in. Instead, I opened the clutch and held the compass in my palm. Its metal was cold, familiar, comforting, the same way it felt when my grandmother had handed it to me on that porch all those years ago. In the reflection of the window, I saw myself, not the girl who had trembled in hallways, but the woman who had stood on a stage and owned her story. For the first time, I believed the gap between those two versions wasn't defined by pain, but by growth. Behind me, footsteps approached. I turned to see Madison standing there, arms wrapped around herself. Ava, she said quietly, I made an appointment with a therapist.
Just now.
Before I lost the courage. I nodded. That's a good start. And I'd like to learn how to be better. Not for you. For me. Then you're already ahead of who you were, I said gently. She smiled, small, sincere, then walked away into the night. As I sat in the driver's seat, I let the engine idle while I closed my eyes. The silence wrapped around me in a way that felt earned, peaceful. My life wasn't defined by high school or by the people who once dismissed me. It was defined by the choices I made afterward. The nights I kept going when quitting would have been easier, the risks I took, the woman I decided to become. Before driving off, I looked at the compass one last time and whispered, I found my direction, Grandma, and it finally pointed me home. Then I slipped the compass back into my clutch, placed my hands on the wheel, and drove forward, steady, sure, and unapologetically myself.